look at here under the original old system, pre-2003, Kyle Busch won the Cup by 48 points to Rowdy is the real champion. Joey Logano is the paper champion. So, Jeff, what do you have to say to that?
You race within the system you race. That tweet right there reminds me we should go back and see who won the Masters and then try to make believe who won it if they move the tees up 500 or 600 yards, right? Like, you can't change the format in which they race in. Listen, it's 15 years from now. Let's move on. This is the system. This is the 5th year of the system.
A driver of 3 wins on the year wins a championship. Similar sentiments, right?
So, Haley, I got a question for you. So, Dale Earnhardt won 7 championships. He only won 2 where he won the most races. Is he any less a champion because he didn't win the most races?
Jeff?
I mean, we're going to have to take him away from him, I guess. All right, Dale, you only got 2.
Oh, Carolyn, you got him fired up.
I figure now, being a couple weeks removed from the championship race at Homestead, the time for conversation is as good as any when it pertains to the sport of NASCAR. Many longtime fans of what was once the highest drawing television or live sporting events alongside the National Football League now believe the sport is in a spiral due to many factors, one of which being the constant changes to both the cars and the rules. One of the best lines in the movie Days of Thunder is that there is nothing stock about a stock car, and that quote rings true today more than it ever has before. The technological advancements over the last 20 years are staggering, but with all of the improvements in safety, speed, and technology, the TV ratings continue to drop, and the live attendance at many tracks have dropped as well. So what's the answer? Many point to the convoluted playoff system, where one win can take a driver above and beyond perhaps more deserving drivers. But I want to take a few minutes to talk about this year's playoffs, because many people believe that Joey Logano is an undeserving champion. But let's take a closer look in the last 10 races, because I know if I don't specify, the very first thing people will say is, but the big 3 were the best the whole year, which, in a way, would be correct. And I'm not here to argue that the big 3 of Harvick, Busch, and TeknoAXE were not the class of the field most of the season. I'd be lying if I said none of them were deserving champions, but the idea that Joey Logano didn't visibly outclass the 3 at Homestead, as well as through the 10 races with solid, consistent, point-hauling performances is asinine. This video will not be about me defending the playoffs. I thought they were exciting, chaotic, and dramatic all the way through. But I also totally get why some people want it gone. So that's number 1. Number 2, I know some people hate stats. I hear the same thing in football, baseball, and basketball about how numbers somehow kill the sport, and I think that's crazy. We as fans often get caught up in certain things. The Kyle Busch fan will point to the 8 wins and then latch on to an old point system to strengthen their championship claims. Not all, but some. Some Harvick fans will point to the late race caution in Miami and say that it cost them a title. These things are not inherently false, but they outline the delusions some fans have when it comes to their drivers. Making up realities and coulda, woulda, shouldas isn't going to get it done. You convince yourself of these things as being indisputable. Claims can be disputed. Numbers can. But before you click off this video, just hear me out, because numbers are not always perfect. And that's not to say some numbers don't look flashier than others. But in terms of playoffs, the ones I want to share are ones I believe will help people understand why it is that Joey Logano shouldn't be to blame for taking advantage of a playoff system that rewards you just for getting hot at the right time. Here's the average finishes over the last 10 races between the final 4. I took all 10 races and calculated everything myself. Now I'm no math wizard, but I am confident in the accuracy of these figures, and if you want to see for yourself, I use driveraverages.com to gather all of my data, which I'll link below. As you can see, all of these averages are really good, and you can immediately tell that the final 4 really showed why they deserved to be there in the finale. The point isn't to make Joey's numbers look better than they actually are. Instead, just giving insight as to how good the big 3 performed, while outlining how Joey got red hot over the last 10 races. You can see that Joey's numbers are clearly better, with an average of 8.6 as his finishing position, which is really solid. That means his DNF at ISM Raceway really didn't affect him much at all, as all of his other finishes were higher. The next closest is MTJ, and while his numbers are also fantastic, they are still a half position lower than the 22 car was in the playoffs. Next on the list, and a stat I think people will find interesting, is driver ratings. Think of QBR in football, where on a scale up to a certain number, a quarterback is rated. Same concept here, only this time we took the averages of our drivers throughout the playoffs from all 10 races. Here, the ratings are calculated by running position, leading laps, finishing position in both stages and the end of the race itself, as well as other qualifying factors. And even here, you see that Joey Logano ranks number 2 behind Kevin Harvick in overall rating. He beats both Busch and TeknoAXE by 4 rating points. Harvick had a ton of success in the playoffs as his cars were all strong. Remember Talladega, where he and the Stewart-Haas guys dominated all day long. He ended up finishing poorly, but his rating was still a 106.9 in that race because of how great he ran all day. Some of his poor finishes, such as at Las Vegas, resulted in a 98.4 rating, which was higher still than some races where he finished much higher, so take that with a grain of salt. His numbers are incredibly high, but not all of these ratings resulted in great or even good finishes. Now we get to this stat I know people love to latch onto, laps led, the indicator of how strong a car was throughout a race. Because I know everyone watching has stuff to do, I made sure to compile every lap led by these drivers through the playoffs so you can get on with your day a little quicker. So who led the most? It had to have been Busch, right? 2018 was his year. TeknoAXE was near the front almost every time you looked at your TV. But, in a twist, those two were actually at the bottom by quite a bit throughout the playoffs, although they all had reasons for their numbers. TeknoAXE had a 3-race streak of leading no laps at all from Dover all the way through the Kansas race. Harvick once again led a huge amount of laps, not all resulting in wins. Busch may have been the most disappointing, though I know he doesn't have the lowest number of the bunch. His cars just weren't always up to par with the other drivers, and his crew let him down in especially crucial moments this year. Logano actually went through 4 races this playoffs without leading a single lap, which makes it all the more crazy that he is second on this list. Nearly half the playoffs he spent not leading a single lap. Now, of course, it is worth mentioning how dominant he was at Martinsville, but even still, his numbers are impressive over just 6 races of leading at least 1 lap. Finally, the big one, the most obvious one. For those of you who've made it this far, I'm sure you'll roll your eyes at this one. Most points in the playoffs. Understand while you see this, it seems fairly obvious the champ should be at the top, but keep in mind that the points didn't really matter in the finale. It was up to the highest finisher, not points. Although given this chart, if it did come down to points in a slightly modified system from what is currently run, Joey would still win by 8 points over Kevin Harvick. This does take into account bonus playoff points, and I have to say, I get why fans of Kyle Busch would feel a little pissed off. Even with his Richmond win, he only gained 40 points throughout the day, which is fairly low for a race winner. By comparison, his win at ISM tallied 54, a much better day. He was, in my opinion, the best driver in the regular season, so the fall off in points is shocking. But let's be honest for 1 second. Who loves the guy who swoops in and takes what's his? Who likes watching an underdog triumph? Who loves seeing someone who has fallen and taken lumps and lost just to overcome and win? Because I know a few drivers who have done just that. How about Alan Kulwicki? A guy who danced with the best drivers in the world and overcame. A guy who told kids growing up that if they had a dream and a chance to go for it and never give up. A champion. How about Tony Stewart in 2011? Winning 5 races in the chase in what was one of, if not the greatest championship runs ever. How about Kyle Busch himself? Breaking his leg at Daytona in a hard crash and working hard, rehabbing hard for months, just to come back and win himself a title that year. How about Dale Jr. winning at Daytona the same year his father passed away? See, it's not the improbable that we hate. Those are the stories we grew up loving, and the ones we connected to. These are stories that stick with us forever. Joey Logano shouldn't be coined the undeserving champion, because at the end of the day, he did what we all dreamed of doing when we were young and imagined winning a race like that. Coming in at the end, passing a rival, and powering away to a win. So what I would ask NASCAR fans is this: don't blame Joey for taking advantage of what you believe to be a flawed system. Real Radman is one of my favorite NASCAR content creators, and he put it best. The time for dialogue is now. No more yelling about how bad the system is. No more screaming about how perfect you might think it is. Let's have a conversation about what we can do to make changes to help the sport. Because I don't want to see stock car racing go away. It's been everything I have loved my entire life, and I know deep down, no matter how much it may make some of us angry or upset, we would all feel a little bit sad if we woke up one day and NASCAR wasn't a part of our lives. I read an article on Yahoo that I'll link in the description about how dire the rating situation has become. It's dropped, on average, 700,000 viewers from last year, and in the past 13 years they've dropped by 5 million. In the article is a stinging but true factoid, being, quote, more people have stopped watching NASCAR in the last 13 years than are still watching it. And that might be the most painful thing of all. Transitional phase or something more, I hope that the ship can get righted again. Even if it never regains the huge popularity it once had, our Sundays are still better off with NASCAR. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm going to read every single one that I can. Whether this gets 10 views or 1,000, I want to know your feelings about the playoffs, the future of the sport, and what you would do to make changes if you were in charge. Thank you guys for watching. VSEV out.